So you've probably all heard the unfortunate news that Nintendo has no plans to bring a virtual console system to the Nintendo Switch currently. To take the quote that was sent to Kotaku, a Nintendo spokesperson replied saying, "There are currently no plans to bring classic games together under the virtual console banner, as has been done on other Nintendo systems." So yes, I, like many, was very disappointed to hear that they had no official plans for a virtual console system. Why I actually wanted to make this video, though, was to talk about how I don't think that's necessarily the end of the world, as much as that did kind of, drive a little stake into the heart. Let's start with what the virtual console really did and accomplished versus issues that we always had with it. The first and the most obvious was always the fact that the pricing was it was uneven because they decided to price every game from each system exactly the same. I remember all the Nintendo games used to be $5 each, all of the Super Nintendo ones used to be $8 each, and so forth. And sometimes it worked, and sometimes it absolutely didn't. You show me the person who actually wants to pay $5 for a balloon fight, and I'll tell you that they're lying, or that they don't really exist, because it's just unreasonable. Sometimes you'd get some bargains in that field, but other times you wouldn't. I know Earthbound was a little higher. I think that one, it was either in the $10 or $12 range or something, something higher than that, and it was understandable because obviously resale copies of it go very high. The nice feature about it was, of course, the save states. Everybody loved being able to use them just like you would on an emulator. Not that I use those. Outside of pricing, I think many would agree that these were not always the best versions of these games that you could play. Obviously, there's nothing like pulling out a copy of the original and playing it, yes, but even as far as emulation goes, people who have pirated these games or downloaded copies of ROMs onto their systems have actually shown comparisons to the Virtual Console service, and the Virtual Console has come up short in a lot of areas. And so it hasn't always been the best. It's just been there. It's been there for people like us who still wanted to support these titles officially, pay money for an official product that we could claim as our own, even though that's not how digital ownership works, but that's another discussion. The problem is, of course, we're all afraid now that we'll never get to see these old titles come to newer platforms. But the good news is that already doesn't appear to be true at all. Something else that Nintendo revealed alongside that disappointing news was the fact that they already have a setup where you can play over 20 plus NES games alongside their yearly online service, which is going to cost, I believe, $20 annually. That's actually not bad if we're comparing it to the Virtual Console pricing, especially when they're adding things like online support alongside those save states and other features. So it kind of works itself out. Now, the other point to make is that there are other ways to buy a lot of these titles, minus some of the more obscure ones, or ones that go past the what I'll call the obvious ones. The biggest difference now is that it will now be up to the publishers instead of Nintendo themselves to be putting a lot of these collections out. Of course, minus the first-party titles like Super Mario Brothers and the like. And the other good news in that regard is that other publishers have already taken to trying to do this. We've already seen Hamster Corporation put out all kinds of ports of Neo Geo titles and classic arcade titles. If you saw my Haunted Castle video, though I hesitate to call that one a classic arcade game, but that's another story again. We also have plenty of releases coming from Capcom, who is putting out not only the Mega Man Legacy collections 1 and 2 on Switch, but also a Mega Man X collection, again 1 and 2 on Switch, even though it never had a release beforehand, but I guess they just decided, no, it should be 2 separate installments. But the option's there. We've got older games all the way from Super Nintendo to the PS1 era, actually no, beyond that, to PS2 era, that will all appear on there. So that's actually pretty nice. SNK is going to be releasing a 40th anniversary collection for Switch with all kinds of arcade games, some of the more obscure ones too, which is a very nice idea. Going back to Hamster, not only did they release titles on PS4 and Xbox One, but they also have more unique ones for Switch, like, say, the original Punch-Out arcade, or the arcade version of Super Mario Brothers, and just other interesting things that we've never even seen there before. So this is another interesting opportunity where we're getting stuff that we never even had before this point, which I thought was pretty nice. Another company that's stepping up their game here is Sega, who's putting out their Classics collection. That's going to have most of the games that were in the PS3 Sonic's Ultimate Genesis collection, but with some differences. Some additions, while I think they're taking away a few that were in the past one. Either way, I'll be holding on to both versions just in case there. Going back to Capcom, we've also got the Street Fighter Anniversary Collection coming out, which is going to have a mix of old and new titles on there as well, and again, will be on Switch and other platforms. So all that this decision seems to be doing at this point is saying that these titles will no longer be relegated to what is specifically called the Virtual Console. Whether Nintendo wants to release these games again in another viable format is up to them. But the option is still there. That's what matters in all of this. It's not like we'll never see any other releases of these games. They're out there, and we'll find more ways to get them out there. Nintendo knows that people want them, and they will find ways to keep that going. It'll be interesting to see how the reception is for this online service once that begins as well, because a lot of the classic NES titles are going to be appearing on that right away. We've only heard about 10 of them so far, but there's still a bunch more to announce that could be just about anything, and once it picks up, I mean, who knows where it's going to go from there. Cost-wise, it's so much lower than something like PlayStation Plus or Xbox Live that I can't imagine people not giving it a try. I mean, anything with the name Nintendo in it, it seems like just about anyone throws their money at it these days, and I am also guilty of this, so I am not judging. But my point was to say this is very, very clearly not the end of the world for anybody. Personally, I'd still love to see GameCube games come to Switch in some playable format, as well as all of the older titles that we've seen 1,000 times over. Am I annoyed that the games that I already bought on Wii and Wii U will not be able to now be transferred onto this onto my Switch? Yes, I am, and I'm going to have to hold on to my old systems because of that. It's really disappointing. Special unique things like Doc Lewis Punch-Out, for example. It was a special downloadable title that was just for Club Nintendo members. It was a platinum reward. It was really more like people agreed it was more like a tech demo. To me, it felt more like an add-on to the Wii version of Punch-Out. And it was cool. It was its own little unique thing. Other titles that were on WiiWare eventually found their way to PC platforms. Games like Lost Winds, for example, which I actually really enjoyed if you ever got to watch my stream of that. But again, most of these things have moved on to other places. The majority of these things you can still buy legally on newer platforms. There are ways around this, and just about the only piece of the puzzle missing now is first-party Nintendo titles, which I'm hoping we'll see some kind of solution to soon. In the meantime, I'll be holding on to my old copies of GameCube games, of collections like Metroid Prime Trilogy, and all of that other rare stuff, because I'm not taking any chances here. But I do have hopes that we'll still be seeing more. Nintendo is clearly paying attention to everyone's reception of this. That much is clear. They also released mini classic consoles, the NES Classic and the SNES Classic, and who knows if we'll see an N64 Classic or a GameCube Classic down the line. But, I mean, the sales are there. People clearly want them. The SNES Classics have done a better job of staying in stock in stores, but they're still selling out all the time. And that's, I mean, the proof is in the pudding that people want these things. I was going to get it just for Star Fox 2 alone, which was already an interesting perspective, because again, it's not that it was anything new for people who had already emulated the unfinished copy, since you were pretty much playing the exact same thing, but it was the idea of having an actual version of it, an actual official version of it for yourself, that made that so special. And I thought that it was really neat that we got to see it in any format at all. And I still have faith that they'll keep putting these things out. But the important thing is to not panic. I know the knee-jerk reaction is to panic about this. I even felt the same way at first, but I slowly came around, and I think that we all will too. Alright, so we're going to get through this together, okay? It's just us. We got this, okay? Love you.